You are listening to the Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Totally Drunk, Spider, and Slambo.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast connecting you with all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 106, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most recent off-season moves, which had been kind of a slow week for us, unfortunately. We'll let you know what's been going on in regards to the Overwatch League talent crew, because we do have new additions on that front. And we also had a recent tournament with Open Division called Breaking Barriers that gave us a little bit of insight on what exactly we should be expecting going into next season. And we had quite a turnout in regards to ex-Overwatch League pro players as well as very popular streamers. So quite a bit of viewership coming in off of that open sign-up tournament for Breaking Barriers. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host tonight, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight on Twitch for a live show, and of course I have to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So as you can tell, we are down one man tonight. I know Enduro was having some pretty bad weather over in his area, so unfortunately he is without power, so we will not be joining us tonight. But joining me tonight, as always, is my other co-host Booger, and Booger, kind of a slow week. It's giving us time to just get ready for the Christmas special that, of course, will be dropping this next week rather than a full-length episode. But how has this past week been treating you?
Honestly, it's been kind of a rough week. It had a ton of overtime mixed up with a little bit of a cold. But down here in Kentucky, we have a really, really good cold remedy that's been perfected in the hills for generations. It's just bourbon. So I'm feeling pretty all right for this episode, and we're going to get through it. It was a pretty quiet week, not a ton to talk about, but we still have some things to go over. I'm looking forward to it.
So let's go ahead and jump right in. So, lately there's been a kind of a common trend happening where we're getting like one sign-in, a couple of people retiring from professional play. This week was no different on that end because we did learn that Custa has decided to retire from professional play. Now, of course, Custa did join the Overwatch League for the inaugural season, and initially he was on the Dallas Fuel roster as a flex support player back in the day. He would later get traded to the LA Valiant during the 2018 season, where he had been the Valiant's main support player ever since. Now, of course, dating back to this past year, we did see Custa sit out a good chunk of Stage 1 in 2019, and this was during the GOATS meta, where Valiant were opting to run Kuki, who was a main tank at the time, over on main support in the 3-3 meta. And, there was a lot of memery going on that front. A lot of people were speculating that, Custa was just too big-brained and his teammates were too dumb to really fully grasp the meta. So they felt like Kuki, for whatever reason, was a safer play in that regard, which turned out to be complete BS because the Valiant embraced, the win zero of their OWL emojis that you can get in Twitch chat to the fullest extent at that point. But with the Valiant, Custa did win the Stage 4 title. That was back in 2018, and he was the most recent winner of the Dennis Havelka Award in the Overwatch League this past season. Now, with Custa no longer on the roster, Booger, what do you feel like the Valiant's identity is at this point? Obviously, there are a ton of moving pieces on this team. They've kind of gone that more budget route, but you really don't have a ton of mainstays left on the roster anymore at this point.
Yeah, Valiant's going to be pretty much a brand new team. Hopefully they'll be, I don't have a whole lot of hopes for what they're doing. They're going to come into this season with a lot to prove, and if they can pull off some wins, that'd be pretty surprising. It seems like they may not have been going a budget route, even though they said that they weren't. So we'll have to see how they're gonna do. I mean, we all. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but we know that Custa was retiring to join the Overwatch talent team. Um, I don't. I think he probably would have stayed with Valiant if it wasn't for that opportunity. So it looks kind of less of a retirement, more of like a promotion kind of thing. What do you think about that? That it's a do you view moving to the talent team as like a step up or like a parallel step? How do you like to think about it?
I look at it more as an opportunity to extend one's career. Because everyone knows the life of an esports player, career wise, is relatively short. Uh,
Yeah.
so on that front, it's definitely a good move, and really, Custa has been no stranger to being a guest spot on the desk prior. Even being behind the desk for like the Custa News Network for the Valiant social media. For me, it's just more of a case of like, obviously, a lot of your big names are gone from the Valiant at this point. Custa's gone, Agilities is gone. You don't have Karif, you don't have Space. You don't have Fact Fiction. It was kind of like part of the glue that held you together at points during this past season. So, looking at the players that have been on the team prior, you still have like KSF, you have Shax, you have McGravy, but you don't really necessarily have like that poster boy anymore. Like who's going to be behind the marketing at this point for the Valiant, because you basically have more than half of your team essentially being brand new pieces in Dreamer, Slur, and Lastro.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of depending on maybe Shax to step up and be the face of the franchise. He had some pretty good pop off moments when he after he joined the team, but he really is still new to the Overwatch League, so it's gonna be interesting to see like who they bring to the forefront with all of their media and stuff like that. What they're gonna do. Um, yeah, I got just a big question mark over the Valiant this coming year. They're gonna really have to prove that they've made the right choices in the off season, because to most people it seems like they haven't, and a lot of the rumors is that's because of money, but maybe they've been seeing something in some of these players that we haven't seen. Maybe they just slayed the tryouts and they're gonna be a good team, but that really does have to be proven. That's where I'm at with the Valiant. They've got a lot to prove here.
Yeah, on paper, it seems to me like you have like these 3 or 4 teams right now in the Overwatch League that are essentially fighting not to be the worst team. They're gonna be keeping it down in the trenches, at this point. And unfortunately, someone is gonna have to get buried in that regard. And the Valiant are just hoping that that's not going to be them in this case. Who it's gonna end up being, we honestly don't know at this point. But it's a curious thing to keep an eye on going into the new season. So while we know Custa is no longer on that roster, that does mean, with the recent edition of Rain, which was leaked, as we mentioned on our last episode, via the Overwatch League website, we still don't have an official announcement on that front, but we were kind of like talking about, like, well, what's this going to mean for Rain? Like, Rain at the time was going to be a backup to Custa, and now all of a sudden it looks like he's going to be your guy on the roster to play main support for this team, since Custa is no longer there. So it's more of an
Yeah,
opportunity for him at this point.
yeah, that signing makes a lot more sense now that we know that Custa's not going to be there. Originally, saw as like, oh, so they got a backup or like a bench player to sit behind Custa, but now it looks like he's going to be their starter. So hopefully he can bring something special to their team this next season.
Trenchfoot is saying that the new face of the Valiant is going to be the Bible Thump emote. Not possibly not entirely wrong. I'll be honest.
Probably
So
for the beginning.
speaking of leaked roster moves, seems to be like every week we're getting one of these now. This one's actually from the Chengdu Hunters in regards to their social media account on Weibo, who had revealed a new main tank sign-in at this point. So basically, there was this image posted on the team's social media that was about like practicing and making sure that you're turning in your cell phones before the team practices. And they had like a lot of the player names written down on cards. So there was Atin, who was actually one of the names among them, as well as the other starters. And Atin is basically someone who's been around in contenders China as well as the Pacific. He's been on teams like Hong Kong Attitude. He had played with LGE Hua over in China. Most recently, he was back in the Pacific, being the main tank on Nova Monster Shield. Now, he's been a member of like the Taiwanese team in regards to the Overwatch World Cup, so he's kind of like been around quite a bit here these past couple of years. But what's weird about this one in particular, Booger, is the fact that this would mark the team's third main tank on the roster, should this be legit. So he would be on there along with a main, as well as GG Run, who does share basically an identical main tank pool with Atin, because they do both primarily play Winston and Reinhardt. It's weird, like, you don't have other teams that are adding this much to their front line. Having a backup is always important, but it does kind of make you question, like, are they going to get rid of one of the main tank players, or is this just a sign that when it comes to a main as a whole, they're going to slot him specifically as more of a flex tank, or just being a Wrecking Ball specialist, as opposed to, just running Wrecking Ball in almost every situation like they did this past season.
Yeah, Aiming, I like him because I play a lot of Wrecking Ball, so I've got a soft spot for him there. But he really didn't show many other heroes, so he will probably be like a Wrecking Ball specialist. But with that being said, in the past, Wrecking Ball has had kind of a different role. We're going to talk about the open tournament a little bit more, but there were some Wrecking Ball Orisa play. So that leads me to think that, maybe Aiming will end up more, like you said, more like an off tank sort of role. And signing 18 might be showing they don't have a lot of confidence in Jajirin, and maybe it's going to be like a competition for which of them is going to start in the main tank slot. So I would kind of look for them, the 18 and Jajirin, to be sharing time, while we'll have Angman in like the off tank role. So where it's available, because Wrecking Ball is probably not the best choice for every map, but he's definitely the best choice for some maps. So that's kind of like is he going to be the backup or the starter? We're going to wait and see. Also, it's kind of weird that they signed him after they did that Shanghai Invitational just a week or two ago. You would almost think they would have, released that they signed him and had him play with them there if he was already with the team, or he might have just been a very recent addition to their practice. Yeah, so I guess we're just gonna see who they decide to field come February. But I do think that Aming's gonna probably keep his spot starting, just because that kind of is a lot of the team's identity. The Hunters, that's the team that plays Wrecking Ball every game. That probably led to like a lot of the reason that people are big fans of them. So, it's if it produces wins, then I would see them sticking with it even more.
Yeah, going back to the Invitational here for a minute, it is worth noting that not all of the team actually traveled to Shanghai for that. So they didn't have like their full 11-man roster at the time in Shanghai for the tournament. So you were only seeing I want to say 7 players that traveled out for that, because I know some of their bench players did not actually make it out. So there is a chance he wouldn't have been among the team with that specific tournament if he was signed at the time anyway. Now, it is kind of weird though. No matter what, there is going to be a tank on this team in a position that he's essentially going to be fighting 2 other players, because should Amin move over to a ball specialist and be used in that Orisa Wrecking Ball, that's also taken opportunities away from Elsa and Late Gun. So there's going to be 3 at 1 slot on tank, one way or the other. So there's going to be a lot of competition going on in order to gain one of those starting positions on this team. Now, there are other sign-ins in the works for the Train 2 Hunters that have long been rumored that we're still waiting confirmation on. So we're probably going to hold off on that until they become official on that end, but, they haven't officially been, leaked on any of the Hunters' social media as of yet. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. But in regards to official sign-ins here as of late, we do have the Los Angeles Gladiators adding in additional DPS to their lineup. So they have turned to former Team Envy DPS player Jaru. So Jaru, who's been around since early 2017, he was initially on Toronto Esports, and obviously that is a very controversial team, primarily because of the owner at the time, who was a complete. I mean, everyone knows the story for the most part about TO and how their owner was a complete shithead. But he would eventually sign with Envision Esports, which was his more tenured position, at least, on a team. And, he would go on to, compete with Team Envy in the North America West Contenders, where they actually won both Season 1 and Season 2 of that year. Now, Jaru is going to be joining a DPS line who, at the time, only had Birdring and the addition of Mirror, who was another recent sign-in. And he is primarily a projectile specialist, so he's probably more prolific on the Genji and the Pharah, but he does also bring Sombra, Tracer, and a not-so-good Doomfist to the table. But luckily, that can be covered by their other flex DPS, so should they need Doomfist, Jaru will not be the answer on that end. But I do want to note that DPay recently noted that the team, at the moment, will be sticking to a 10-player roster. So when it comes to internal scrimmages, they're going to be running some arenas on that front. So we already have a little bit of wiggle room for the Gladiators should they decide to go out and get some mid-season pickups, depending on whatever weak spots they notice in, that first little bit of the season. So I have to say, I'm actually pretty happy with this. I maybe the Sharp sign-in in regards to Team Envy was probably the bigger deal in regards to the Overwatch League mid-season, but it seems like initially, based on a general consensus, over on Reddit and just on social media, a lot of people seem to be sleeping on Jaru at this point. And, only having 3 DPS on the lineup, there's a pretty good opportunity that we will be seeing a lot of Jaru getting slotted in on the Gladiators here.
Yeah, I think they definitely needed to pick up a third DPS, and it seems that Jaru is a pretty experienced choice. They have Birdring on that team, who has a ton of potential, but has struggled to reach it at times. In other words, he can be a bit inconsistent. So it's really important for them to have a third DPS just in case. So I think that this was just a really smart pickup by the Gladiators. It looked like they were looking at their team saying, hey, we got to find a third DPS. And they went out and found someone who has, quite a bit of Overwatch experience. So, they couldn't have done a better job, really. So I'm really looking forward to watching some Gladiators this next season. Even though they're a completely different team, it seems like they kept up their standard. They didn't trade out all their players and not keep the same standard. They have the only returning players they have is Shaz and Big Goose, I believe. So they only have 2 returning players, and the rest of the team's all new. But it doesn't seem like they took many downgrades. It seems like almost all their spots are either step ups or at the same level. So I'm really looking forward to see, if this is going to be Gladiators' year. They're looking to be the premier Los Angeles team this coming year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for those that weren't connecting the dots here, you're basically saying that the Gladiators are a better run organization than the Los Angeles Valiant.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Now, I will say, based off of what we saw out of Breaking Barriers, I would highly suspect that Jaru will be slotted in as the main player on this team early go-ins for the Gladiators, since that is definitely in his wheelhouse as well. Probably not going to get to see his Genji, just based off of what we've been seeing in scrims and in these tournaments here as of late. But, they definitely needed to go out there and pick up another DPS. But it seems like, at least for now, the Gladiators are going to sit tight and not have any other announcements for us unless it is something on the coaching staff, which honestly I wouldn't expect either, because they are quite a bit going on there on that track as well. Asadura has power back. Welcome back.
Oh, cool.
Imagine that. So, outside of that, as we mentioned earlier in the show, we do have some new additions to the Overwatch League talent team. You might have a couple of names here that you might recognize. I don't know from where. But you have like Jake, Custa, pretty like low key names in the esports scene as a whole. So of course recently they both retired from pro play anyway. Not to say that Jake and Custa both didn't just play on the same team in the same tournament, which totally happened over the weekend, by the way, with Custa playing. He was playing tank. Jake was actually DPSing. But both of them will not be going very far. So you have Jake, you have Custa, both joining the talent team for 2020. Custa will be part of the analyst group on the desk, and Jake will be going to the caster's position to cast some of the Overwatch League matches. Who his partner is going to be, we still do not know at this point. But as I mentioned, Custa, he is no stranger to the desk. He was on there multiple times, both for interviews, and he was also part of the broadcast team during the Talent Takedown, which was held, during the All-Star break this past year. And, Jake, also no stranger to this new position. He did cast quite a bit of the Overwatch World Cup. I know last year, or this year, I should say, he was paired with Lemon Kiwi. Maybe she'll get called up, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But, with the league having to juggle broadcasts in multiple locations in 2020, and of course, all of this is, happening during the weekend on Saturday and Sundays now, the talent team as a whole was needing to grow for the new year. Obviously, travel is gonna, bring a lot of challenges logistically for both players, coaches, also the talent crew on that front. But I want to get your thoughts on just the actual move and whether or not you feel like Custa as a whole is going to be slotted in as more of like the reinforced role, where maybe he's not going to be there at all times. Like, do you feel like they're going to alternate between like the pro player perspective, or will we kind of get like a combination of the two, kind of like throughout the season?
I think that Custa will spend a lot more time on the desk on camera. I don't think he'll be as much of like, I would just bring him in here and there. One thing I am curious about is if they're gonna handle some of that remotely, or if they're gonna have the talent teams actually at every homestand, or if they'll be able to have a centrally located desk every weekend, so that some of the desk could have some sort of stability of where they're going to be at, because what they're doing, they don't have to be there. We saw like the tournament we saw over the weekend, we saw some of them casting remotely. Like, that's possible. That's something they can do. Whether it'll take a hit on the quality of the broadcast or not, that's kind of to be determined, to see how, it depends on how they would do it. But I think that where they're going to have multiple events running at the same time, it's going to cause a higher demand for casters and desk. So seeing them already start picking people from the league, it's like, who better to put on the Overwatch League desk than someone who's played in the Overwatch League? It's not like every single person needs to be ex Overwatch League there, but to have that presence there is, something we're probably going to see moving forward as more seasons go on. We're moving into the third season of the Overwatch League, so it's not crazy at all for a player to play in every season so far. So as it goes on, we'll probably see this to be more and more common of players finding careers within the league after they, you mentioned earlier, the Overwatch League is very young. So it's great that it provides a career path for, you know, people that get a little bit too old to keep playing keep playing in the league.
Or too big
Um,
brained.
yeah. He's too big brained to comment on just one team. He's gonna need to analyze both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, if you probably couldn't pick two better people to be from the league to the team. So it's just these are hirings that just really make sense. It really does. A little bit it makes me wonder if the direction the Valiant was going influenced Custa to make the jump now as opposed to later. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall and said, "Hey, let's take him up on this job now instead of waiting." So yeah, I'll really look forward to hearing Jake cast and see Custa breaking down the games. I think it's great.
Well, based on Cuss's twit longer, he did make it seem like the direction of the team had nothing to do with the move.
Yeah, but that's the professional thing to do.
Right.
You
You don't want to,
know,
like, crap on the team that was essentially your identity at the time.
yeah, and he's still going to be working within the league. So if he just was like, "Yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here," then it would be bad. It would be awkward for him moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes and you don't want to burn a bridge you don't got to. So I would not expect him to say that was part of the reason if it was. So it totally makes sense that he would say that, but I wonder
Right.
if that's what he really meant.
Well, I also don't think he was in a position where an opportunity wouldn't be there in the next year either. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, the talent team would have opened him, or welcomed him with open arms one way or the other. I do want to note, like Anura did mention, that according to Custa on his stream, that the analysts are going to be based in LA. So it looks like that side will actually be pretty remote on that front. Whether or not that also means casters remains to be seen. But I do feel like that makes the most sense, just having them at a set location. That way they're not having to deal with too many of the travel expenses because they're already taking in a lot of that. Just moving, the coaches as well as the players on that end. So we'll have to wait and see on that front. But, for me, like, I'm just happy to see Jake in his element because he seems so giddy about getting to cast during BlizzCon for the World Cup. He definitely feels like in his element when he's doing that. The only downside is, in regards to Raiden Rip tires, the over-under on that's probably going to be like 2 or 3, probably for the season. So he's going to be pretty bummed about that on that front. But, who knows? Maybe that will be more of a all-star game sort of scenario that could come into play later in the season.
Yeah, that it also is gonna stack the talent a little bit for the what's it called when they have all the casters and
The talent
analysts.
takedown? Yeah.
Yeah,
We got
it
3
really.
pro players. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they're gonna have to split them up somehow. They probably need to hire one more to make it even for 2 and 2 because someone's gonna get an advantage. But
They should absolutely have Dogman be the other person to move. Now, so a little bit of background here. Last night, Dogman's stream was honestly one of the funniest things I've seen from an Overwatch player / streamer. So Dogman on his stream all night for like 5 hours was running a tournament, right? But it wasn't any tournament. He basically was running this unofficial bot tournament featuring all of the Overwatch League teams. So based on how the teams did this past season, he would give them a seed. So if they were like seeds 1 through 10, they would be hard bots. If they were like 10 through 15, they were medium. 16 through 20, they were all on easy. So they basically started running this bracket last night, which was wrapping up tonight. But there were so many clippable moments, and Dogman is just that type of person who it's just he's a goofball. He's always entertaining. He always knows how to like get the crowd going. Whether someone is feeded or not at the time doesn't really matter. But we need more community figures like Dogman. So Dogman to me would like make the most sense, regardless of what role they would try to slot him in. So I'd like to see him enter the fold at some point. Might not be this season, just based off of what information is out there. But I feel like transition into that role would just be really easy for him in particular.
Yeah, I think he would do a great job on the. Uh, I don't think that he's done competing yet. Seems like he still has that. He wants to get that big win before he leaves. It seems like, but I saw a clip from that stream where there was a Lucio like glitching and he was making it into a dance and got up on there. I was rolling. That was hilarious. So yeah, I think he could totally bring a lot of humor to the desk if he wants to at some point in the future. And you know, maybe Atlanta has an off week. They have a bye week. They're not playing any games. Maybe he can make a guest appearance and get some practice or something. That'd be hilarious.
Well, I know there was a recent interview with Sugar Free's dad, Sugar Free being a player from ATL Academy, who kind of like let it known like Kodak is expected to sign somewhere in the Overwatch League, so maybe he'll be back with Atlanta, maybe not. Well, let's see on that front. But outside of that, really the only other news that dropped, there were a couple of things, which I don't have in the show notes, but I know earlier today we did have the San Francisco Shock named as the Esports Team of the Year by ESPN Esports. So of course, the Shock. What hasn't already been said with the Shock's run? They held the Golden Stage. They fought their way back in the playoffs, just completely decimated everyone along the path. Really bringing in the full use of that 5 DPS rotation and doing some odd things in regards to payload, running the Bastion strats a lot better than some of the other teams, New York, who tried to also do that. Just not to the same level as San Fran. But outside of that, there was also a new sponsorship that dropped for the Overwatch League that, for a lot of people, just like raised a ton of eyebrows, and they're like, today, I learned that TeamSpeak is still a thing. So on that note, TeamSpeak has become the Overwatch League's official voice chat supplier. And this deal is a 3-year deal, so it's going to be going until 2022. And, it seems like they're just going to be using TeamSpeak from now on. Now, I don't know what that's saying about, the in-game voice in regards to the game. I think it works fine. Obviously, a lot of us are just accustomed to probably using Discord at this point, in most situations. But it seems like a lot of this was just built around the fact that with the introduction of travel, they are looking to just clean up the communication on comms in regards to, the amount of lag or latency issues that could arise, knowing that they are going to be in so many different locations. But, like, a lot of people just looked at this and they're just like, wait, what? Like, TeamSpeak is still around? Because, like, I know you and I were talking, before we started recording the podcast, and, I haven't touched TeamSpeak in probably close to 10 years at this point. Like, so many people have moved on from that voice IP just as a whole with the introduction of, like, so many other alternatives nowadays. So, but, one way or the other, it's basically, it's a 3-year deal. It's bringing more money into, the Overwatch League. Like, I don't remember seeing, like, any dollar amount in regards to the deal. But, with so many alternatives, like, a lot of people were just like, well, like, why TeamSpeak, of all things?
Yeah, it's like either they're gearing up to like launch a new revamped version, or they're just like trying to claw back into relevancy. I don't know anybody that uses TeamSpeak. I don't have it on this computer, so it's like really weird that that's what they went with. But I guess bringing more money into the league and stuff like that, it can't be bad. I just, like where, why TeamSpeak? So I guess it's a there's I wouldn't assumed that they would just use the voice in game, but I guess that's gonna be TeamSpeak for things outside of on stage.
Hmm.
I wouldn't see why they wouldn't just use the in-game voice chat. Like I'm I'm not aware of any problems with it. So maybe yeah, who knows with that? That looks just like a business move that might be outside of the scope of what's going on in the league.
Yeah, it seems more like a last-ditch effort on TeamSpeak's behalf to kind of like clean onto any sort of relevance or just trying to get their name out there more on that front. Looking to bring in more players as a whole into the surface. But does this mean like the mic check segment is now going to be sponsored by TeamSpeak? I mean, I would imagine like TeamSpeak is going to be all over that whenever that arises, because that was one of the common segments that was done in between the matches here this past season.
Yeah, and that was a pretty funny segment. I think it was pretty popular throughout a lot of the community. So it would probably be something pretty good to sponsor to, bring some more eyes back to the company. But I don't know. TeamSpeak might be too far gone to be saving, but they could be gearing up to launch like a new improved version or something like that, and this is going to be their way to get it out there. That's kind of what I would assume. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't. I would think that if they're spending Overwatch League money on sponsorships, they're probably going to spend money on some improvements to what they have too. So we'll just see how that goes moving forward.
So outside of that, really not too much else going on in the Overwatch League here as of late. As we did mention, there was kind of like this open tournament that happened as part of the Path to Pro, which did have a prize pool, and that was the Break-In Barriers tournament that happened for both NA as well as EU over the weekend. So we had 2 days of action for both regions. Of course, EU kicked off earlier because of the time zone differential. But this tournament featured a ton of ex Overwatch League pros. You had a lot of popular streamers in it as well. And, it kind of gave us an idea of what to expect because, as of right now, this is the first tournament being ran on the new patch, which is patch 1.34, which is one that nerfed the barriers. It was a one that had the armor changes as well as other balance updates. So got us a little bit of insight on what we can expect going into 2020. Now, before we actually talk about like viewership or anything like that, let's just throw out a couple of the names that were involved in this tournament. Now, I will note, like, on my part, I did post more the NA side because I didn't really see a ton of the EU. So you had players like Elk playing on Yes. You had Yeetle, who is one of the more popular streamers out there who plays a ton of Wrecking Ball. You had Titawatt, iRemix, Sleepy, I'm 37. The list goes on. And then, of course, you had like Harblue, Silkthread, and Kefri all on the same team, who dubbed themselves Betrayal after, I guess, like someone went to another team. And so they decided to like change their team name for the tournament. But then you had the meme dream team on stream that had Jake, Custa, Avast, Fran, Clone Man, and J3 all on the same team. And, a lot of people were like following them probably closer than the other teams. But, you had pieces from like Goats, you had Askin, Red Shell, the list goes on and on. You had so many big names in this tournament, which was just great to see. But like part of me was just like, hey guys, we have like an Open Division tournament, so you have all these Open Division teams, and then you have all these ex-OWL players, or like Tier 2 players, that are just like, oh, it is a prize pool, and they're like, yoink.
Yeah, I tuned in mostly yesterday. I really watched the Yo Yes Old Man Strength series. That was a pretty fun one to watch. And when I was watching it, I was giggling about how all the teams had funny names. Now that I got to talk about it, it makes me sound kind of, it makes me feel like I sound dumb talking about a team named Old Man Strength. But yeah, the watching Yo Yes really saw Elk pop off. That team also had Asking on it, who had some insane plays going on with Hanzo. He even showed a little bit of McCree and was just absolutely insane. So that team was really a pleasure to watch for real. Um, I started out watching the meme dream team, watching it through Jake's stream until they ended up getting put out of the tournament. Um, yeah, that was pretty fun to watch. It was notable that Custa was playing tank and not healer, like you mentioned earlier. I guess that was the meme of their team to have Custa playing tank. Um, with this tournament, we still did see a lot of double barrier,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Sigma and Orisa, but we did see a little bit of Orisa Reinhardt as far as double barrier goes. And Old Man Strength had Yeedle on their team, and he is a Wrecking Ball main, and he is a very good Wrecking Ball player. So it was interesting to see, they forced the Wrecking Ball pick for pretty much every map he was in and still rode that out to finals. So that was really impressive. You can, it showed that you can win some games playing something that's not just Sigma Orisa. So it looks like this patch is going to have quite a bit of variety come into it. Um, I'm curious if the popularity of Sigma Orisa in this tournament was because that's what a lot of the teams had been practicing previously, um, or if that's still the best picks. So, what do you think about that?
Well, I feel like based on how much like open division teams and tier 2 teams there were in this tournament, that's probably what they feel like is the most beneficial still to this point. Because there was a healthy mix of like these meme teams, open division, and tier 2 teams, and like it didn't even come down to any of the meme teams in the finals. It was basically an open division team going up against like what would be a contenders team on both sides of the regions. But like for me, like I want to talk about more like the viewership aspect, because knowing that so many people were actually streaming this tournament brought a lot of eyes to the tournament. And yeah, sure, like not all of them were on like the official like Overwatch Contenders Twitch channel, but you had people like Hardblue, who at times had over like 10,000 viewers in his stream during the event, which I think was like might even be higher than what he's normally getting in his streams. But Hardblue as a whole for me was probably like the MVP of like the entire tournament with how much he was popping off at the tank position. So definitely made a case for himself as maybe a mid-season pickup for the Overwatch League, if that is something that he is actively looking to pursue. But he's had a very long tenure in the tier 2 scene as well. But you had like a lot of players who were, streaming the matches on their channel, on like a 3-minute delay. You had, the Overwatch Contenders channel. You had like casters out there who were like kind of doing their own thing. I know Leg Day was doing some casting. You had like ZP and Hexagrams like reuniting. Like back in like the old school like Ghost of Gamers weeklies, they were casting like day 2 of the action, which would be the Sunday games. And then, you also look into, like, the amount of clips that were being thrown around on Twitch. So the amount of highlights we saw from this tournament alone, like, vastly eclipsed anything that we saw out of the contenders matches here this past season as well. So, for me, it's more a matter of, in the past, there used to be, like, pro pugs that would happen involving some of the Overwatch League pros. And Blizzard completely nixed that. So I wonder if like these open tournaments are going to be a sort of like replacement for that, because the amount of viewership and interest that it garnered from a huge chunk and big names, at least from the community figures, was so massive. Like, this was honestly like one of the best things to have happened to the Path to Pro scene here as of late. And sure, we got contenders starting up again here within the next month, but you want to try to get as many eyes on that channel as you can going into that that next season, and run another tournament like this is only going to do great things, and have the community as a whole just continue to embrace kind of that path to pro system, especially with the ecosystem kind of changing heading into 2020.
Yeah, I think this tournament definitely should be something that they continue to do. Um, Maybe even have some sort of schedule for these open tournaments during the Overwatch League off season. That seems to be the prime time, theoretically, it seems would be the best time to be having these tournaments. Uh, I mean, it probably got a quite a bit viewer bump because it was fun to watch, tournaments are just more fun to watch. That might just be my opinion, but to know, win or go home, that just putting those stakes on it, even though they were playing from home, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still just to have stakes like that just add like an extra level of interest. And I I thought it was just awesome to have. And if I'm not wrong, they're doing another
They are.
tournament this coming week.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I'm looking at the Reddit thread right now actually because it was posted like 45 minutes ago. They do have the registration open for the Breakable Barriers number 2. Again, it will be NA and EU, and that would be December 21st and 22nd. So you have NA starting at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And of course, with the EU, they have it as GMT. So I'm not going to convert that because I don't know what that is. Probably like 4 or so hours, probably before the NA starts. But they're doing it again, and it's worth noting too. Like I didn't even bring this up. Like this is the first time like they had been experimenting with the whole game battles website in regards to like registration and everything. So like it's another like tournament client that they're testing out as well, kind of like along the way. And of course, a lot of people will meme about like the NA production side of things. But I do have to shout out our boy from Push the Point, Labosco, because he was coming in hot on casting here on the second day, and of course he was involved all day with that. So love seeing him up there. That was awesome to see. And of course, like they had Elo Hell, as well as Broadcast GG involved with that. So a lot of the community input for the tournament as well. But since it is like a newer thing, they are looking for feedback and things like that. So if you guys enjoyed what you saw, like be sure to send feedback over on the Reddit thread, wherever that has been posted. But at least for now, this seems to be more of a recurrent thing in the off season. It's just a matter of at what point, like in between seasons, do they stop doing this? Like, is this going to start up again after that first season of Contenders? Or is this going to be kind of like well, in this case, 2 and done up until the next, like, very lengthy stay in between seasons, either at Overwatch League level or the Path to Pro?
yeah, this where it's like the first one, it almost kind of seems like a beta test or something like that. And I would look for them to have a like more ironed out schedule for it coming next off season, or maybe even like a one in the mid season of Overwatch League. But I do think that they'll probably have them next off season slightly spaced out a little bit. Um, no matter what they do, it seems to be like a win-win situation as long as they keep having these open tournaments. Because for Blizzard, they did it wasn't on land, it was all online. So they don't have quite as much money invested. They put up the prize pool and stuff like that, but it's not the same kind of investment as like a homestand or a LAN event. So it's like a good way to showcase talent without having to put too much at risk. And it was also really great for us to get an idea of what the meta is going to be, because if I'm not wrong, this will be the patch that Overwatch League starts on.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll kind of have an idea of what we're going to be seeing at the beginning of the season, and that the double barrier Orisa Sigma is going to still be very much alive. But I personally enjoy Orisa Sigma. I know a lot of people don't, but those are two of my favorites to play. So it's good to see that they're not going to be totally gone. Um, but we did get quite a bit of insights into what the meta's going to be like. There was, instead of the Reaper May, it was a lot more Hanzo May as more of the standard. And for healers, we had a lot of the Baptiste and Zen, because now where barriers actually break, Zen is able to get some damage through. So that was you know, while the tank meta didn't switch up, it did. The standard comp is slightly different. It's not. We didn't see very much Reaper at all during the tournament.
No.
Or yeah, so that is where we're saying that double shield's still alive. It's still changing the meta up some, and there were teams coming out there showing that there was other comps to be played too. So I think that this patch was a very, very good patch for competitive Overwatch going forward.
Well, regardless of if people want to label it double barrier, it's not like the barriers were actually up for that long because of the nerfs that happened with patch 1.43. Now, Mate Hanzo definitely was the forefront in regards to the DPS, but we did also see a pretty big uptick of Pharah play, which was more in like these dive comps with like Wrecking Ball, where they would run like Wrecking Ball, Pharah, and Tracer as a trio. And of course, because of that, like we did get to see quite a bit of Mercy play, and to counteract Pharah Tracer, we also saw a pretty big uptick of McCree play as well. We did see a little bit of Widowmaker here and there, but it wasn't as prominent as the Hanzo or the McCree in many cases. But the thing that I found more interesting was the fact that you had a lot of these Open Division teams that were running more like Pharah Hanzo DPS. And there really weren't a lot of other teams that were running that, so I don't know if that was like more of a flavor at like the tier 3 level, or if tier 2 was just so focused on running like the Mayhan so over that. So we did get to see a couple of variations on that regard. But in regards to like the healers, like we got a pretty big mix. We did see a little bit of dive, so we saw not a ton of Lucio, but with the Baptiste really coming into the forefront here as of late. Like, if I'm Rascal, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, I wouldn't care if I'm getting slotted in as a support, knowing how much damage output you're having as a hit scan support, when Baptiste is putting out, more damage than a Soldier 76 is nowadays. So we saw, a good mix of Anna Mercy, a good mix of Baptiste and Yada. But, like, the Mei Hanzo is going to be more telling in regards to how some of these teams are going to be faring in the new meta, as well as the double shield. But, I was happy to see that Ball just wasn't completely gone, because we did see him in a lot of dive comps. So, if you're the Chengdu Hunters, you're probably still feeling pretty good with Jinmu on main, covering those two positions.
Oh yeah, it definitely looks like the Hunters are gonna start this season out with a bang. The teams that excelled the most last season doing the Wrecking Ball Pharah style comps was the Hunters and the Dragons. And we don't really have the same core of the Dragons. So I'd look forward to Chengdu being a big winner coming up with this patch. And another team that I think is going to be huge coming in at the beginning will be Washington. Corey is nuts on Hanzo. Stratus plays good in May. That team just looks to me. I'm gonna go ahead and predict them gonna be the most improved team moving forward into the next season. Um, so yeah, the Farah ball that makes for very interesting Overwatch to watch. So hopefully that will find its way. That's one of those comps that's very map dependent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the frequency of how much we see that is going to be based on the map pools. But yeah, it did definitely. Also, I'm gonna take a second and talk about Elk playing on Baptiste. he absolutely popped off. I would say that between Elk and Asking, those were the key points that carried Yo Yes to that victory. And more than one time that I was watching, we saw Elk completely turn the tide of fights by himself. And I don't understand why he hasn't made it back to the Overwatch League yet. So I that could definitely be a midseason pickup for any team that needs a Baptiste main because he had some very impressive play throughout that tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that was just the fact that he was sitting for so long on the bench. Like maybe it was more of a confidence issue with Elk, but like a lot of people knew going into the season, like Alarm was a surefire sign in or promotion from Fusion University to the main roster. So a lot of people were wanting to see that support duo back to the forefront. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, that just wasn't in the card, for the Fusion, despite how pivotal both of the support players were on Fusion University at the time for that team, who just completely annihilated NA, which, by the way, like, even looking at contenders this next season, they did move NA back to one region. It's no longer split between the East and the West like it was in this past season. So I'm sure a lot of that had to do with the fact that, there's kind of like almost a mass exodus in regards to some of the academy teams on that front. But, like, I was really hoping that May was going to be gone. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But, the Hanzo play definitely brings, like, Nero to mind for the Guangzhou Charge. I mean, he basically instilled fear in the Titans with his Hanzo play, so, like, that's another player in particular that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. I fully expect Rascal to be playing Baptiste for the Shock. But, like, what's interesting is, like, despite, yes, we are, in fact, in double barrier, because of how quick the barriers are breaking, it basically completely negates any sort of opportunity at playing in bunker compositions. So as good as Baptiste is, as good as, Arista Sigma is, at least, being prominent in the meta, you're not going to be seeing a ton of Bastion just because the shields just aren't there to protect you. So if you're expecting to see a lot of bunker, you shouldn't be at this point in this current meta that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think the time of that Bastion bunker comps is gone for now. Uh, with the nerfs to the shields, that just Bastion ends up being vulnerable and he's not very mobile. So yeah, we're gonna definitely see a lot more. I think Hanzo is gonna be a big pick, and it's an absolute pleasure to watch those Hanzos hit the headshot on the Orisa pool just perfect. So we're gonna have a lot of fun watching Overwatch coming into the beginning of this season of the league for sure.
Unfortunately, we still got like 2 months at this point. Like, it seems so far away.
Yeah.
53 days.
You're counting it down like.
Well, like, I have
Overnight
Overwatch GG up, so I'm just like, oh my goodness, like.
Yeah, it is pretty. We still got 2 months to go, but I wouldn't be surprised if this should still be the patch that the league starts on.
Mm-hmm.
So this tournament was just a lot of really good insight. When the patch notes came out, a lot of people thought that was gonna bring it into Sigma with his shield being weaker, but one of his like big parts is he just puts out a ton of damage, and you can't underestimate the rock. The rock, that's like one of the key parts of playing Sigma. So as long as he still has those tools, I think he'll still find a spot. I like that, with the nerfs, they nerfed the barriers, but they still gave the heroes something else, so it didn't feel like they were just eliminating them from the game. Because Orisa, Sigma, those are still fun characters, and now with the barriers being reined in, it's more fun for everyone else too. So that seems like a pretty good win. I think that the teams with a really good Sigma will benefit big time. But I think the Hanzos are gonna be the big carries at the beginning of this season, big time.
So that definitely paints New York in a better picture with Libero in that case. And I do want to note, too, like, in regards to the comps that we did see, there were also teams out there who were trying to force classic dive compositions. And those did not pay off well. So if you're hoping for Tracer Genji, like Winston Diva, Lucio Zen, or whatever second support you want in that case, it's not happening, guys. We're not going back to 2 years ago.
Yeah, if there's gonna be a dive comp, it's gonna have to be revamped. I had it on and wasn't paying real close attention and glanced over and saw a team was running like the Monkey Ball, Tracer Genji, and I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. And then the next thing was defeat. So I don't know. It seems like Genji might be the weak spot there. Tracer did get not in this most recent patch, but Tracer has got a buff, so she might be able to find a spot. But I think the days of Tracer Genji dive, that's not gonna happen unless there's something big change with Genji for real. They gotta have a big change. But I guess there could be a dive that would be like a Sombra Tracer dive that could work, or even if they had like the pharmacy with a monkey ball, and there's it seems like there could be potentials to have a dive comp come back. It's just not going to be that traditional style, and it would probably be very very map dependent too.
All right. So outside of that, really not a whole lot else happening here this past week. So I feel like it's time that we wrap things up. Kind of keep it short. Around like an hour or whatever this week. But just as a reminder, guys, the holidays are coming up, of course. We're recording this on Monday. Today's December 16th. So just as a programming update for you guys, regardless of what shows you listen to on the network, it's important to note that next week, the week of Christmas, we do not have a recording planned for a live show. So that would be on the 23rd, the 25th, both for Overwatch League Network as well as Heroes Never Die. Now, does that mean, like, we have nothing coming out? Absolutely not. We do have a Christmas special episode that is planned to be released on December 24th, just like we did for last year. So expect like a shorter episode, a lot of memery, a lot of shenanery, all of that good stuff. It was a blast putting that together last year. We got more, people involved this year, which I'm always happy to see. So look for that on December 24th. But outside of that, that will be the only new episode dropping on your podcast feeds for Christmas week. Now, with that being said, of course, if you guys want to help us out, the best thing to do is to head over to your favorite podcatcher, preferably iTunes, since that is the more commonly used one. And, write us a review. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know how we can improve the show. Obviously, we've introduced some new faces, some new voices to the show. So we're still, working out some of the kinks. We're definitely improving week to week. So let us know what you would like to see incorporated to the show. Just let us know how we're doing, because every little bit helps on that end. We do also have Overwatch Recall, which is our Overwatch-related podcast directory. So if you're looking for any content in the Overwatch scene, whether it is, general Overwatch, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League, because we got quite a bit happening there now, as well as, lore stuff, things like that. We have Overwatch Recall on our website, and then every Sunday night we do the Weekly Recall, which lists all the prior week's episode releases. So to catch up on all the latest, be sure to follow Recall on Twitter at OWRecall. Now, of course, we do have a Patreon page, so if you're looking to support the show, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/OWLnetwork. There we have our tier started at just $1 a month. And guys, really any little bit helps. So you too can join the likes of our Messer and above patrons in Blazing Bob, Brendan, Jay-Z, Owl, and Kesha in helping our network grow. And of course, you can throw Twitch Prime subs our way for our Twitch channel, as well as the Tier 1 subs on Twitch at $4.99 a month. And then any help there, of course, goes towards the podcasting cause of our Libsyn, which, as you know, we are a network, so there is quite a bit going on in that front, but we do appreciate any help that is thrown our way and support, whether it is just showing up, downloading the episodes on our network, or pitching in here and there whenever you are available to do so. Now,
Yeah.
With that being said, Booger, we do have a number of different ways how our listeners and viewers can get a hold of us, so why don't you go ahead and let them know how they can do that?
Yeah, if you want to contact the show, we have the email at contact@owlnshow.com. The website is www.owlnshow.com. You can find us on Twitter at OWLN Show and on YouTube at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We have our Discord, which is discord.me/OWLN Show, and on Twitch at twitchtv.com or twitch.tv/OWLN Show. We're a Twitch affiliate, so you can help support the show by subscribing to the channel. We've got Overwatch League Network that airs Mondays at 7. When the league starts back up, there'll be Overwatch League by the Numbers, which will be Tuesdays at 6. Heroes Never Die, the Variety Overwatch show, airs Wednesdays at 5. And host streams, when available, will run on a flex schedule. And Patreon is patreon.com/OWLN Show. And if you want to contact the host, you can get Totem.
Yeah, that's at Totally Drunk CTR.
And then we have Anura wasn't with us today. He's at Anura_09. And you can find me on Twitter and Twitch at Booger Brains with 2 Z's, BOOGERBRAINZZ. And that's what we got for the host.
Absolutely, and just a note on OWL by the Numbers, we are planning on bringing that back here, probably within the next couple of weeks, so that should be back as a regular show in January, when we'll be talking all about whatever the new format changes are to, daily leagues as well as highnoon.gg. I'm sure we'll have both of the developers on to talk about all the changes they have in store for us. And then, of course, we will do our rankings based on positions throughout that month as well, leading into the start of the 2020 fantasy season for the Overwatch League. So with that being said, guys, I do want to thank you again for joining us tonight on another episode of Overwatch League Network. This has been episode number 106. I've been your host, Totally Drunk, joined, as always, by my co-host, Booger, and we hope to see you guys back on Wednesday for our final new episode leading into Christmas. Take care, and have a good night.